I mean, he's on chapter 4, I believe. But I thought I will not take any verse from that chapter because it may not be same as what Achyut Gopal Prabhu does. So I thought I will start from chapter 2, chapter being just an introduction. Chapter 2, some important verses, 3-4 important verses I will take and discuss that. And maybe when I get another opportunity like this, I will continue from chapter 2, the remaining verses, etc. So the first verse that I have chosen today is 2.1. Tam tata kripayamistam ashrupunakulekshanam vishidantamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha. Anybody would like to try?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, please.
Tam tata kripaya vishtam ashrupunakulekshanam vishidantamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudana.
Sanjaya uvacha tam tata krupaya vistam asrupurna kuleksanam visidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha.
Sanjaya Vacha Tam Tada Kriyabaya Vishtam Asrupura Kulakshanam Visidantam Idam Vakyam Vacha Madhusudana.
Good. Yeah. Sanjay said.
Uvacha
Okay.
Tam tata kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam vishidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha.
Good. Anybody else? Okay. We proceed. Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following word. So, in chapter 2, starts with the Sanjay informing Dhritarashtra that seeing Arjuna's depressed condition, the Lord, whom he calls Madhusudana, starts speaking. We can discuss the significance of calling Krishna as Madhusudana. And Acharyas explain that Sanjaya thinks that Arjuna's doubts will be killed by the killer of Madhu and Kaitaba. The doubts that arose in the mind of Arjuna are compared to the demons. In the previous chapter, we have seen how Arjuna was overtaken with compassion and with lamentation. He had even kept his Gandiva down, saying that he did not want to fight. Now, do you want me to read the purport? I don't mind reading it, but it will take some time. So, I don't know. Yeah, I will read. Material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. The word Madhusudana is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, and now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. No one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for the death of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nations cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress. the gross material body. One who does not know this and laments for the outward dress is called Shudra, or one who laments unnecessarily. Arjuna was a Kshatriya, and this conduct was not expected from him. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of the ignorant man, and for this purpose, the Bhagavad Gita was sung by him. This chapter instructs us in self-realization by an analytical study of the material body and the spirit soul, as explained by the Supreme Authority, Lord Sri Krishna. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results and is situated in the fixed conception of the real self. So, as I said, this chapter starts with the Sanjay informing Krishna, informing Dhritarashtra that seeing Arjuna's depressed condition, Krishna starts speaking. Now, significance of calling Krishna as Madhusudana is, as Acharya has explained, Sanjaya thinks that Arjuna's doubts will be killed by the killer of Madhu and Kaitava demon. The doubts that arose in the mind of Arjuna are compared to demons. In the previous chapter, we have seen how Arjuna was overtaken with compassion and lamentation. He had even kept his Gandiva down, saying that he did not want to fight. Dhritarashtra had doubts actually about his son's chance of winning the battle because of the sacredness of the place where the war was taking place, that is Kurukshetra. But now he was rather happy that he heard that Arjuna is in a mood of renunciation, and he thought his sons would have a better chance of winning the war. Arjuna was overtaken by grief with the thought of having to kill his spiritual master Drona and his grandfather Bhishma. He was also, of course, compassionate to other soldiers in both the armies, because by nature he was compassionate. This is termed by Prabhupada as material compassion. Prabhupada says material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance, as we have seen, of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So to lament for outward dress, that is the gross body, or one who laments unnecessarily is called Shudra. So there is a difference between material compassion and spiritual compassion. So we shall try to understand the difference between the two types of compassion by taking a simple example. Let's say a child is lost in a jatra and the child is crying for its parents. Out of compassion, someone takes pity on the child and brings an ice cream and gives to the child. Child is happy, comes quiet for some time. After some time, the child again starts crying. This time, the child is also hungry. So another person, again out of compassion, buys some chole bhature and gives it to him. The child is again pacified for some more time. But a third person thinks, ये कितना कब तक चलेगा? बच्चा रोता ही रहेगा और हम लोग कुछ ना कुछ ला के देंगे. It is better that we take him to the police station and leave him over there. And he actually does that. He goes to takes the child to the police station and leaves the police station and goes away. He doesn't even wait. for what happens, to see what happens to the child. But one more person, the fourth person, who has seen all this drama going on, he comes to the police station and then says, "Sir, please give me this child. I will take him to his parents. I will locate where he is." And police somehow, he convinces the police and gives the child. And he actually locates the child's parents, asking few questions to the child, getting some clues, and somehow goes to the parents and delivers the child. And the child stops crying. Now, who is more compassionate here? Who is the best amongst the lot? Of course, the fourth one, because he could give the child to the protection of his parents. And that is what child wants, because that is the ultimate protection for him. Any other thing that you do becomes temporary. The child in the shelter of the parents will always be happier than anywhere else. Thus, we see that there is a lamentation in material compassion. They are but temporary. Arjuna's compassion with lamentation and tears was material compassion. One's help to ensure the shelter of the Supreme Father is the spiritual. So Prabhupada says, no one knows where the compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nations cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. So Arjuna is worried that the gross material body of his guru and his grandfather will no longer be there. So that is only a material compassion. Ultimately, he has a duty to perform, and that duty is to actually listen to Krishna and also take the people, actually the soldiers fighting ultimately to their ultimate destination, that is Krishna's abode. So by this kind of compassion, he is not going to do that. So I just came across a book called Bhagavad Gita 365 Reflections for Daily Mindfulness by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So what he says, even when our eyes are full of tears, we can still choose to all ears, tears and ears. And our way ahead can become clear. When our vision is blinded, we should see with our ears. Can you see with our ears? No. But seeing with our ears means Arjuna was so overwhelmed by grief that his bow started slipping from his hands. His eyes became filled with tears, and he lost the will to do anything. However, instead of passively giving in, what he did was he consciously turned to Krishna for guidance. And he heard the Gita's message of immortal love. And that message raised his vision above his precarious material condition to his imperishable spiritual essence. So by thus situating himself in spiritual understanding received by hearing, he became filled with clarity and energy. What he says in 18.73, let us see what he says in 18.73. 18.73, he says, Arjuna uvacha nasto moha smratir labdha tvat prasadam mayachyuta sthitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Says, Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, My illusions is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and I am prepared to act according to your instructions. So his consciousness has been raised from material situation to spiritual situation. So by hearing Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, by lending his ears and seeing through his ears, he has raised his status. Now we come to the next verse, that is 2.7. Yes, 2.7. Karpanya dosho pahats sabhavaham prachami tvam dharma sammuda chetaham yashreyasanis chitam bruhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Anybody volunteering to?
Karpanya dosha ubahasvava Vrachamitam dharma samura setaha Yashrayan nijidam bhuritan me Shishyastyam sadimantam prapannam.
Karpanya doso pahata swabhavaha prachami tvam dharma sammuda chetah yaksheyasyam itam bruhitan me tishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam.
Karpanya dosho upahat svabhava pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda cheta yachreyasva sanishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham chadimam tvam prapannam.
Good. So the translation is, now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this connection, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrender unto you. Please instruct me. So the purport is quite long, so I would read only one para. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse. It's very essential purport. So we don't read further. So Arjuna is perplexed, yet we can see that he is eager for enlightenment. Here Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, and Krishna's role as a friend now turns into that of a guru. So the essence of this verse, as we saw, is to approach a bona fide spiritual master, that is one in a bona fide sampradaya, parampara, to come out of material perplexities and for proper guidance to execute the purpose of life. So we have to approach a bona fide spiritual master. He is supposed to know everything. Thus, one should not remain in material perplexities, but approach a spiritual master. This is the essence of this verse. So Prabhupada gives an analogy of a forest fire here. So he says both material perplexity and the forest fire happen without a desire and without being set by anyone. Nobody wants it, but it still takes place. There is no desire, but perplexity takes place. One does not want to be in material perplexity, but it happens. So, who is the man in material perplexities? It is who does not understand the problems of life. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, the perplexed man is defined as a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human and who thus quits this world like cats and dogs without understanding the science of self-realization. So this human form of life is most valuable asset for all of us, for the living entity, and he can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity is a miser. Kripana. He wastes his time on material bodily consumption by being overly affectionate to family life, wife, and children, and thus he is no different from animals. He suffers from skin disease, as he calls it, which refers to attachment to the family, wife and children, and other members. The two aspects of skin disease are, he thinks that I can protect and save my family members from death. I am able to do it myself. And secondly, he thinks that my family can save me. So he has confidence in the family also, that they can save him. And then he quits life like cats and dogs without understanding self-realization. So, and on the other hand, there is a Brahmana, or who is intelligent enough to utilize his body to solve the problems of life. So, a Kripana and Brahmana, Kripana is a miser, and Brahmana is all knowledgeable, and he knows how to utilize this life without being miser to solve the problems of life. So Arjuna sets the correct mood of understanding the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita here. He stops friendship and surrenders to Krishna as the first disciple of Bhagavad Gita, unlike the mundane scholars who think that there is no need to submit to Krishna, but to the unborn within Krishna. Therefore, he is considered the greatest fool. So Arjuna did not do that. He surrendered to a proper person. Because Arjuna surrenders to Krishna here, we naturally expect Krishna to begin his instruction in the next verse. But he does not. He has not accepted Arjuna as a student. When Arjuna says, I am perplexed, confused, and I want to surrender to you, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan gives Krishna's reply. Krishna says, you know Shastra, why not use your own logic and reasoning? And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says, Krishna mentally replies, I am your friend. I am not in the mood of being your guru. So how can I accept you as my disciple? Because you have respectful attitude towards Vyasdeva and others. Why not go to them? So Krishna's initial response was to test Arjuna's determination. He wanted to test him. But Arjuna further expresses his desire to surrender to Krishna in the next verse. When he seeks Krishna, when he asks Krishna to enlighten him and dispel his distress, he says even a prosperous kingdom or a heavenly pleasures will leave him unsatisfied. See, he tells Krishna in the subsequent verse, Krishna, I shall not fight. Only then, having seen Arjuna's determination, Krishna accepts Arjuna as his student and starts speaking to him. Here again, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says, intelligence means to know what to do when we don't know what to do. Is it not quite confusing? Is to know. Intelligence means to know what to do when we don't know what to do. He says, whenever we have to make decisions, we usually seek guidance from our intelligence. But life sometimes puts us in perplexing situations wherein our intelligence becomes paralyzed. We feel as if we are going along a familiar road and suddenly encounter an unfamiliar intersection. At such times, we need to turn towards someone knowledgeable and reliable for guidance. Consulting such person amid perplexity is also a sign of intelligence. So at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, his life till then had been running along the track of dharma. But suddenly he came to an intersection where he was pulled in opposite directions by two dharmas. One, as a member of Kuru dynasty, and the other as a Kshatriya, a martial guardian of the society. Being thus conflicted, he felt baffled, disheartened, and intellectually paralyzed. When his intelligence did not know what to do, it still knew what to do. Turn to supremely reliable guide, Krishna. He surrendered to Krishna to understand the essence of dharma. So, thus the Gita wisdom expands our conception of intelligence from a guide to decision making to guide amid indecision too, thereby protecting us from the intellectual paralysis. So proving that we are right is not as empowering as probing if you are wrong. Whenever confronted with the unknown, if we try to check whether we are wrong, that learning attitude will not only empower us in that situation, but also help us learn something new about the structure of reality that can empower us lifelong. Indeed, a learning attitude was what Arjuna adopted when he surrendered to seeking his understanding in 2.7 and acknowledging the futility of all reasoning he had been doing till then. He became empowered by the timeless wisdom because of his willingness to learn. We too can be empowered if we seek Gita wisdom amidst our confrontation with the unknown. So what we are seeing in this verse is how Arjuna is perplexed yet eager to listen to Krishna for enlightenment. And we also seen what is the essence of this verse. Approach a spiritual master when you are perplexed. And we have seen who is a miser and who is a Brahmana. And consulting a person with intelligence when you get perplexed is also intelligence. Proving that we are right is not always right. So we have to also probe to see where we are going wrong. So, may I pause here for any questions, if you have, what we have discussed so far? If not, we'll proceed. So, next verse we see is 2.13, 2.13. Yeah. Dehinosmi yata dehe kumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptim parthi dhirastasana muhyati. Anybody would like to try?
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्ते धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
Good.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यदा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तदा देहान्तरप्राप्ते धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरा प्राप्ति धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तर प्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
Yeah. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered. So these two verses, 2.13 and 2.14, 2.13 and 14, Krishna gives two very important concepts. How to understand birth and life in general. So 2.13 also I'll read one para only, the first para. This also purport is quite long. So since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet, the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death, neither for Bhishma nor for Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old one to new ones, thereby regenerating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in their next life, or at least life in the heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. So in 2.13, the theme of this verse is a dhira is not bewildered by change of bodies. Change of body means boyhood to youth, to old age, to another body. So Krishna tells Arjuna, the matter is always changing. You can never expect matter to be permanent or static. There is only one thing permanent in this world, and that is change. We were all at some time, some point of time, we were all 5 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old, married, middle-aged, or very old. But the body of 5, 15, 25, etc. is not with me now. At the age of 80, if I survive, I may be bedridden. Body has thus always changed. but you have not changed. You remember everything that you experienced at different ages or stages of life. So in this Deha, there is a Dehi. Krishna introduced the concept of Deha and Dehi here. While Deha has always changed, Dehi remained the same and made your life perfect. The ultimate change is at death, when the body transmigrates to another body. Small changes keep happening. When we grow up from the age of 5 to 15 to 25 years, etc., we never complain. But when the ultimate change happens, that is when we die, we complain. Why? When on occasions we wear new clothes, it's a moment of happiness for all of us, and we expect someone else to admire it. We discard the old ones and wear new ones, and that makes us happy. We do not cry for the old clothes. When the child is born, everybody is happy. He is wearing new garments. Why become unhappy at death when, as a natural process, one discards the old garments and goes for a new one and transmigrates to a new body? So this is the principle here. Since it is sure that the body at death will transmigrate into a new body, either material or spiritual, there was no reason for Arjuna to lament for the death of Bhishma or Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Death is simply a change of body. Every embodied soul, Dehi or Jiva, must endure it. Bhishma passed through the stage of boyhood, then youth, and now he is an old man. Thus, he has already changed his body many times, from childhood to until he became the old person. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, and also for the reason that they were sure to get spiritual bodies because they were all noble people. They are noble souls. They will surely get the next spiritual bodies in the next life. So why mourn or why feel sorry for it? So if you have heard the history of Yayati Maharaj, there is a story of Yayati Maharaj. I don't know if you all know it. It provides a very graphic example. After growing old, Yayati traded his old age with his son for youth. Upon obtaining the youthful body, no one lamented at that time. And king had relinquished his old body, but nobody lamented at that time. Rather, everybody was happy. Here Krishna asks Arjuna, why lament if Bhishma and Drona take a new, young bodies? Do not be bewildered. Dhiras tatra na muhyati. A sober person is not bewildered by such change. Yes, the story is a long one, so I will not go into that. So we'll go to Dhira. Who is a Dhira? Dhira is a most sober man. Prabhupada explains, he is one who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul, and the nature, both material and spiritual. He is undisturbed by change of bodies. He tolerates dualities. He thus becomes eligible for liberation. So Krishna here is indirectly telling Arjuna that he is not a Dhira. When he says that a Dhira is not bewildered by such a change. he doesn't want to tell him directly that you're not a Dhira. He says, a Dhira doesn't mourn, doesn't become nervous in a battle like this. So it's like a mother-in-law telling her daughter in the presence of daughter-in-law something which in fact she wants actually to tell the daughter-in-law, but she doesn't tell her directly. She tells her daughter in the presence of daughter-in-law. So daughter-in-law gets the message. So do we have time now? Yes, we still have time. So in this verse, what we have seen is who is a Dhira, how Dhira is not bewildered, and the concept of Deha and Dehi, change that takes place in the body culminating in the death, and the story of Yayati. Yayati took the body of his son, but at that time nobody thought that his old body is living, and nobody was feeling sorry for him. So we go to 2.14. Is it okay, Parandal Prabhu, that I continue with 2.14? Parandal Prabhu? Okay, he's not there. Matra, yeah, shall I continue with one more verse?
8:5 Prabhu already. 5 minutes Prabhu.
5 minutes, okay. Matra sparshasthu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nityaha stam titiksha bharata. Anybody?
Matra sparshesha kaunteya shidoshna sukha akama apayana anitya tam tishishva bharadaha.
Oh, son
Hare
of
Krishna
Kunti.
Prabhuji.
Yes.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkada agama payino nitya tanti tikshasva bharata.
Good.
मात्र
Yeah.
स्पर्शस्तु कान्तेय शीतोष्ण सुखदुःखदः अहमापयिनो नित्यस्तं तितिक्षस्व भारत.
Good. Since Parandal Prabhu has given only 5 minutes to me, I'll just quickly go through this. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from the sense perception, O Shian of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So the purport here is, in the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate a non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January, February. It is very cold at that time. But in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas. And although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya. So in the previous verse, Krishna brought about the concept of body, Deha and Dehi. Deha is always changing and Dehi is never changing. One may wonder, if Dehi is never changing, our life experience should also be constant. But is that the case? No. there is kabhi gum, kabhi khushi. How is that? How is that the Dehi is going through various dualities? Here, matra means sense objects. Sense objects interact with senses. There are 5 knowledge acquiring senses: eyes, nose, ears, tongue, and skin. In these 5 senses also, the perception is always dual. There is a sense of touch. Somebody pats me with motherly or fatherly affection, so I feel happy. When somebody slaps me, I feel distressed. Both are touches. If I smell a rose, I feel happy. If I pass through a gutter, I feel unhappy. Both are smells. Somebody praises me, I feel happy. Somebody insults me, I feel distressed. When palatable things come in contact, I'm happy. And opposite is the case with unpalatable things. So when things come in contact with the sense objects, it is always dual. When one knows that dualities arise only from sense perception, one should think of the higher goal, that is path of liberation, and tolerate them. Shita, Ushna, Dukha, Sukha, there will always be dualities. What should one do? Krishna says, tolerate them. Many times people give sermons. Aage badho, jyada mat socho. If you sincerely work at it, the result will always be in your favor. But we must always remember two-finger philosophy. One represents our endeavor and the other the mercy of the Lord, Sukriti. One may desire but may not deserve because of our previous karma. One may like to be Karulpati, but his previous karmas do not make it possible, or his previous karmas are so good that God thinks that he deserves much more. So Krishna therefore says, one must learn to tolerate. Tolerating them is part of dharma described in the scriptures. He must reconcile the situation. ये जीवन मेरे हिसाब से नहीं चलने वाला है. जो भगवान चाहता है वही होगा. Prescribed duties are essential for spiritual advancement because they fulfill desires in a regulated means, and thus gradually detach one from the bodily concept of life and allow him to rise to the platform of knowledge. Krishna instructs Arjuna not to lament, but to tolerate. Arjuna should not forsake his duty for temporary pain and pleasures that arise. Krishna gives.
சந்தோஷமா இரு சாப்பிட்டு. நீ எல்லாம் இந்த வயசுல பேச சாப்பிடணும் அவ்வளவுதான்.
Shall I continue? Prabhupada gives 2 beautiful examples. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, even though it is very cold at that time. One who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the month of April and May, the hottest part of the summer season. The third example, the student who studied the whole year cannot afford to miss his exams. There are similarly other examples to fight the religious principle of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from the prescribed duty. Renounced order of life, which is full of austerities, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has renounced his wife and mother. So these are all very difficult things to do. But then one still does it. Here again, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu gives a very useful tip to circumvent a situation of distress in our day-to-day life. He says, amid unmanageably distressing times, we must reduce our working frame to manageable limits of time, which means that we should not get bogged down thinking, how will I manage this distress if it continues, say, for 1 year? if you start thinking what will happen to us for a year, we will be overwhelmed and paralyzed because the variables are unknowns and unknowns are too many. To work constructively, we need to reduce our working frame to manageable time limits, such as just 1 day or 1 hour, or something like that, and challenge ourselves saying, yes, this time is enough. This time is tough. Yes. But for this 1 day, can I not freak out and not collapse under pressure? If we try, we can surely keep ourselves together and prepare ourselves for the next day, for the next hour. So he says, you have to always tell ourselves, this is a temporary phase. You can throw a challenge and then say, with Krishna's mercy, I can always overcome this. So this is all for the day. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.